Hey guys, I am going to show you how I organize my daily 5 rotations in my classroom. It can be a really hectic time for your littles, but if you have a system that you like and works well for you, then that really helps to limit the chaos that might consume your daily 5 stations. So there are 2 different ways that I have done it in the past. It just depends on the students that I have. The first one that I really like, and it just depends on how my technology is working that year or not, whether I use this, is a PowerPoint version. So you can see on my screen here that I have 6 different slides. They're each a different color. That just kind of shows the students that, yep, the page has turned, and they know that they're moving to a new center when it's time. The first thing that I do is I type in their numbers. I assign all my students a number based on their alphabetical order, and it just keeps me from having to write their names on everything and change it out every year. So like book boxes have a number on them instead of a name, because then the next year the same student has the same number versus having to change out the name. It just makes it a little easier for me to manage from year to year. So I type in the student name or number here. So I would, if I wanted students 4, 16, 9, move those up a little bit. And then I had 2 more kids that I wanted in this group. I would just tab over and I would add in numbers 14 here, scoot that out a little bit, and we'll say I want number 2 in there, and I'll have 5 kids in this group. So I would arrange those in here. You can add a text box up here if you want each number to have its own text box so that you can move around and manipulate them however you want that way. That's how I do it. Or you can just use the text box that I have here on the page and just type all of them into one box. You can also do student names, and you would do that on each different slide here. So on this first one, these kids are going to be reading to self at their first rotation. What I would do is I would highlight all the text in this box. I'm going to copy it. So you can either, I'm on a Mac, so I command copy, or you can right click and you can copy as well. Then I go to the next slide here, and they move 1 rotation over. So they were on read to self, now they're going to listening to reading. So I would paste those in, which is Command V, or right click and paste. Okay, and those will get those in there. And I would do that on each station, each slide, moving 1 rotation at a time. So they will just move over 1 station on the PowerPoint. I have pictures here for them to see. So on this one, then they would be going to word work, paste those in there again, slide them over so that they fit in the little bubble here and are easier to read. You can change the size. You can change if they're bold, not bold. That's totally up to you, whatever your preference is. But there are these little picture indicators here that help the kids that can't read the station to know what they're doing. They get used to seeing the picture and they move from station to station that way. I do not just change the slide in between stations and expect my students to move to the next rotation. I found management-wise that it was easier to have my students come back to the carpet and meet with me. We talked about what went well in their station, what's something they could work on the next time they were at that station. If I had any announcements, I gave them the announcements then, and then I would send them on their way to the next station. So I would show them this slide. This would be the slide when they come back to the carpet then. Once I moved it to this one, I would give them our signal word or transition word, and they would move on to the next center then when I was done with my announcements and we were done talking about what went well and what didn't go well. Some groups that are ready to be even more independent, I didn't bring back to the carpet, but most of my groups, I think I've only had 1 in the 5 years that I've done this, that I didn't necessarily make them come back and touch base with me in between. So I also have the teacher time right here too, down there, so that it helps you remember who you're with and you can schedule it that way. The other freebie that I have, if I minimize this one here, is just a paper copy of the same thing, basically. So I set this up in a pocket chart, and I'll have pictures of that in the blog post below here. There are 5 different groups here, and there are the different rotations. And then these pages you would print and cut apart and arrange them in a pocket chart. So I would just cut these apart and laminate them, and then use like a dry erase marker or a vis-a-vis on there so that I can change groups, because my groups were always fluent. They were ever changing just depending on grade, how the student was reading and what grade level they were reading at, different things like that. So I would put the groups going vertical, and I would put the rotations going horizontal. So then I would fill in next to that group. So if group 5 here is reading to self first, then that would go under rotation 1. Then if they move to read to someone next, that would go under rotation 2. I didn't always have a good block of time, so I usually split mine up into sections of 3. So I actually even did mine in 2 rows. So rotation 1, 2, and 3 were in one row, and rotation 2, 3, 4, or 4, 5, and 6 were in another, so that they could distinguish that this time I'm going to go to these 3 stations, the next time I'm going to go to the other 3. But the pictures will help explain this a little more than I can here just in PowerPoint. So if you want this freebie, enter your email in. There's a little screen that'll pop up here when you logged into the website, or you can go to the Contact Me page, and there will be a place that you can sign up for emails there. Thanks for checking in with me today.